Hi, smart moms and dads. We are so happy to have you join us for another episode of Brainy Moms. I am your host, Dr. Amy Moore, here with my co-host, Teri Miller, coming to you today from Colorado Springs, Colorado. And we are super excited to have another conversation with our friend, Jessica Speer, who is joining us from just down the road in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Steamboat, right, Jessica?
Exactly.
Yes,
Yep.
Steamboat. Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about Jessica before we talk to her. So she's an award-winning author of the book BFF or NRF, Not Really Friends, A Girl's Guide to Happy Friendships, and the book Middle School, Safety Goggles Advised, blending humor, activities, stories, and practical insights. Her writing unpacks the tricky stuff that peaks during preteen and teen years. Jessica has a master's degree in social sciences and a knack for exploring complicated topics in ways that connect with kids. And she is here to talk to us about her latest book, The Phone Book. Stay safe, be smart, and make the world better with the powerful device in your hand. Welcome, Jessica.
Thanks so much for having me back, Dr. Amy and Teri. I'm so excited to be back with you.
Yeah, we are excited to talk to you too. Like when you said, "Hey, I've got another book coming out," I said, "Well, bring it," because we just love your writing style. We love your personality. We just love how you contribute to the world. And so it's just always fun to have a conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, for my middle school daughter, the very first book that we interviewed you about, that very first book, the Not Really Friends book, that was really impacting for my daughter. And it opened up some conversation about some things she had just been crying over. So good stuff. Okay, before we dig into it though, for listeners that did not hear those first two interviews, and if you didn't, go back and listen to them. But so if you would, Jessica, go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit about your history, what brought you to where you are today with these incredible topics for middle school or teenage kids.
Sure. Well, my name is Jessica Speer, and at this stage, I'm writing books for a preteen audience. And I've got a background in social sciences, and I'm just especially fascinated with this age group because there's so much going on. Kids are kind of transitioning from being kids, but they're not quite young adults, and they're exploring their identities, and there's a lot going on for them socially. So for me, that really piqued my curiosity. And my first book grew out of a friendship program that I ran for girls. My second book, which it really dives into middle school, I spent a lot of time in seventh grade classrooms, really trying to get a good understanding of what is it that makes middle school so tricky. And then this latest book, I actually wrote during the pandemic when we were all getting sucked into our devices. And at that time, I had a preteen and early teen, and I realized, oh my gosh, I've not had the conversations I need to be having with my kids about this that is about to change our world. And as we've seen, digital devices have certainly changed how childhood plays out these days. It's a really different childhood than our childhood. So yeah, that was the inspiration for that book, is to really explore that in a way that connects with kids, because I do like to write directly for kids. I feel like kids are so smart, and when we could put stories and insights in their hands, I feel like they make really great choices. We just need to give them the information and the awareness, so they can navigate life at this really interesting age, those preteen years.
Yeah, I love how you make these solid connections and concrete examples for these kids, because we know that preteens can't necessarily think abstractly about their future, right? Like, hey, this is really going to impact you when you go to apply for college, or this will follow you into adulthood, right? And that's really hard for them to understand without concrete examples. And so I just love how you tell stories and create these examples for kids to kind of attach those concepts to. I'm always so impressed with how you can ground kids in those concrete ways.
Yeah, and I'd love to, as much as I can, use the real stories, that I'm actually seeing and hearing on the ground. So especially in this new book, the phone book, all those stories are real, and some of them are like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for that preteen that happened to, but it's important sometimes to, we can learn from that experience. Younger kids can learn that, oh, okay, maybe I should, try to remember that things are, aren't, that I want private, I maybe shouldn't post, online. Just all those, we learn through stories, so I try to use that to help kids, make better choices and be more informed.
Yeah. And so speaking of real stories, I love how when you're doing your research for your books, you are just in the trenches with kids, right? You don't have big mahogany desk syndrome, right? Where you're just sitting in your home office pondering what it means to be a preteen without actually talking to preteens, right? And so as you were doing your research for this book, what surprised you the most when you were talking to kids? What was the topic or what you discovered? What was the most surprising?
One thing that I think is really interesting is, what happens with kids that are first getting their phones is so different from the insights they have when they're in their later teen years looking back. And so, for instance, I was, as the school year this year was wrapping up, I was hanging out with some juniors and seniors in their classroom, and we were just chatting about technology and phones, and they were feeling so nostalgic for the days pre-phone. They were actually so grateful that phones didn't come into their lives, so they still got to play kick the can, and they still got to play neighborhood fun games outside. So they were actually nostalgic and feeling bad for kids today that are getting phones so early they don't get to experience that. And I even find with my own older teen, the insight she has now about what she was experiencing in those preteen years on her phone is so different. Like, she's so much wiser and self-aware to know when she's falling into FOMO, or but we're still in that point where kids are getting phones earlier and earlier, so they don't quite have that self-awareness yet. So that's, again, another reason I wanted to write this book, is to help that along. But I guess what was inspiring to me is to see, as kids get older, they definitely get more self-aware and informed as they go. So I know some people are so worried, oh my gosh, this is going to ruin kids today. It's certainly not the best environment right now with technology and the safeguards on kids, but what I've seen is a few years down the road, they are so much wiser, and they're going to be great leaders and teachers moving forward. I'm so interested to see how this generation of teens will raise their kids when it comes to technology, because they got to experience firsthand what it's like to actually have a lot of technology at your fingertips and not a lot of guardrails in place.
Yeah, it's going to be such a different world. I mean, when our kids are raising their kids, I know technology changes so fast. The world is changing all the time. And yet that's going to be just a really, really huge difference that, when we were kids, it was worrying about what we're doing in the neighborhood and who we're going to ride bikes with. Yes. And, stay safe and close enough and check in and things like that. And now it's, oh my goodness, who are you riding bikes with, so to speak, online? What are you doing online? It's just such a different perspective. It's wow.
And there's some little downtime too, so that's one thing I definitely heard, is there is digital stress, because they are expected to kind of respond fairly quickly to texts and, somehow navigate these really complex group chats. And, we didn't have that, when we were away from our friends, and got that downtime and time to regenerate. And that's not really a thing anymore. So yeah, that's really fascinating. And it does add a little layer of social stress to kids these days.
Yeah, I think significantly. I mean, looking at my kids, I feel like more than a little layer.
Yeah, you're right.
Layer, because I've got my oldest is just about to turn, well, she just turned 29. What did I say? Just about. The 16th was her birthday. She just turned 29, and my youngest is 11. And so there's this huge range of experiences and the difference in their perspectives when they were in these middle school and high school years. It's just huge. Then the stress that you're talking about, I think it's really big on preteens, middle schoolers right now. And I think so much of it is what you just said. They cannot get away from it.
Yeah, you're right. I shouldn't understate that. I think it is a big thing and a lot of added pressure on them, and complicated, group chats. When you're in 6th grade, that is a complicated place to navigate a group chat as a young person. That is very complicated. And, a lot of the drama plays out online within these chats and DMs, and people getting kicked out of groups. And, so I don't want to put a lot of fear out there, but it is complex. It's more complex than navigating these things in person, I would say.
Right.
Well, and
that
there's
they-
a permanency to that too, right? That you talk about in your book, that it isn't, the playground or lunch table conversation that is done and over at the end of playtime or lunchtime, right? Like there's permanent evidence of online conversations or
Yes.
sharing of photos or saying things and liking things that follows you. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and so that is a chapter in the book about digital footprints. And so this is, for younger brains, this is a harder concept to grasp onto, that, kind of what you're putting out there now actually might affect you in college. And it does. It is a common thing for, college admissions now to search, students. And for the most part, it actually is really positive. They can find some really cool things that, prospective students are doing online. But there have been situations where, applications have been revoked, acceptance has been revoked because of things they found online. So those conversations need to start early and often with kids, and even beyond college or future employment, because 12-year-olds might not even want to think about that yet, but just thinking about what do you want out there. Our what we put out there in the world is kind of our persona, and like it or not, people judge us. There's an activity in the book, people judge us for that. It's called You Be the Judge, and there's screenshots of person A, and some positive things, and then there's some screenshots of person B where there's some questionable things, and the readers asked, you be the judge, which one of these would you hire to work in your ice cream shop? So just some of those examples about, we like to say we're not judging a book by its cover, but we're actually doing that all the time. As human beings, that's our brains just do that. So just helping kids be aware that they have a lot of power to shape their digital reputation. Luckily, they just have to think about, how do I want to present myself online, which is not that different than when we are, entering a room and meeting a bunch of people for the first time. We think about, how do I want to present myself, except it is much more permanent, once we come to the digital world. So that's a conversation that needs to happen quite often, and things can be deleted, but as kids know, it's so easy to screenshot, and then that file is no longer on your phone anymore. It's actually on somebody else's phone that's maybe then saved into the cloud and maybe shared via text. So just being acutely aware of that. So that's a tough one for young brains though, but it's important for us as the caregivers in our lives just to keep talking about the importance of that.
Yeah, I love how. Oh, go ahead, Teri.
Oh, I was just going to jump to a different topic that I'm curious about. So if you're still sticking with that,
Amy, I want to stay here for just a minute. So I love how you were bold enough to have a conversation about sharing nude photos with this age group, right? Because those seem like taboo topics, especially for middle schoolers. But I think, well, talk to me about your thought process there, What made you want to devote real estate in your book to that?
Well, I can't tell you how many middle schools are dealing with this right now. So I thought, I cannot talk about this because I haven't come across a middle school yet that hasn't had an issue with nudes, and so I know for later teens and young adults, this is possibly becoming part of their culture. But when we're talking now, preteens, there is no way that preteen girl wanted that photo shared, and she probably shared it without really thinking that through. But it happens in middle school. So my thought on that is, as soon as we're giving our young one a connected device, they're able to connect to others via text, or we need to have that conversation really honestly about that. And so yeah, this story is a true story in the book about a boy and girl that start, in quotes, dating. Middle school dating is, not high school dating. It's still like our middle school dating, but, was asked to share a private photo of herself, and she did. And then the next thing you know, it's shared. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. So this is something that middle school counselors are dealing with. So yeah, so to answer your question, I felt like I can't not talk about this, because as soon as we are giving kids a phone that has the ability to share text with their friends, that's a possibility. And it's important for them to know what to do with that. It's really important, to not save those things on your phone. There's still many states with laws where that is illegal. So just knowing that nuance, that this is definitely not something that we want to, allow them to do. Let's help them be fully informed. Once they're older young adults, that's out of our control. But when they're really young, let's empower them with as much information as they can, so they don't end up in that situation. Because what I've seen for girls is that's hard to recover from socially, especially in middle school. When that happens in the middle school years, it's a tough one for those girls to navigate.
Yeah. So I want to shift, and it really is just a slight shift to the perspective of parental control. And so of screens, of phones, of what's happening there. And so you're in the trenches, and I know there are perspectives. I hear it from my kids. I hear it from other parents that vary from the helicopter parent perspective. That's like, you get this limited phone, you have a limited use of screens. There's all kinds of things, parameters. Internet goes off at a certain time, you dock at a certain time, really strict parameters. To the other perspective, which is, hey, you figure it out, you're going to experience it, you're going to learn from staying up till 4 o'clock in the morning and being exhausted so many days in a row. You're going to learn. You have to actually go to sleep at night and put your phone away. So wide range.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about what you're learning as you're in the trenches from kids.
And I'm so glad you asked this, because I do feel like this is a tough one for parents, because as of the state of the world right now is that this is all falling on the parents. I wish that there were more safeguards and supports in place so that this all didn't have to fall on the parents' shoulders, because that is really hard. But what I'm hearing from students is they're not getting a lot of sleep, they and it makes sense. They're 11 and 12. They don't have the self-control. If their phone is buzzing like crazy, which most them are, what I did learn is most of them have access to their phones all night long. So that phone is buzzing. And so kids are not getting a lot of sleep. And I am such an advocate for sleep. I feel like that is so foundational to their mental health that for me, this is where we do as parents need to step in and help them, because the phones are designed to keep us on them. It's called persuasive design. That's how they are made. And I talk about this in the book. Some of these tricks, such as Snapchat streaks, or having to earn tokens to get to the next level, or having to even check in on these young games for young kids where you have to check in and feed your pets or they die. I mean, that's actually a thing. So there's all these tricks that keep us drawn back. And kids don't have the self-control in their prefrontal cortex yet to manage that. So for me, where that becomes really clear is if this is really hurting their sleep, we're not in a situation where we can even help them, so then everything in life starts falling apart, their relationships, their academic, so once we're not sleeping nearly enough, things start to crumble. And we can see that the mental health of youth right now is not great. And I wonder how much of that is sleep deprivation. So I would say that's where we need to come in and help put some decent sleep patterns in place, because I don't think young brains are quite equipped to, their social world is everything. So I can see where this is really hard. This phone is buzzing all night long, and the party's on, game on. People are chatting, people are conversing, but it's our responsibility as adults to help teach them the importance of this self-care and how important that is for them. And using some examples, there's some, we can, find some stories of some professional athletes that will profess how important and sacred sleep is to them. So this is an ongoing discussion at my house too, with 2 teens. But my kids, they have such clarity on, how much value our family places on rest. There's no doubt in their mind. And so, I think sometimes we need to get to the point where the internet shuts off, at a certain hour, and we can control that. And it's off, and you have to rest.
So I like that approach because so I'm a parent who did not put limits on my children's access to their phones. So now my kids are 18 and above now, but I was not a helicopter parent. I did not put the app that tracked them or anything like that. I was kind of, hey, you do you. Is that necessarily the right choice? I don't know, but that's how I parented when my kids, had their phones as young teens and teens. But I love that for those parents like me who don't feel the need to put tracking devices or monitoring devices, but care about their children's functioning during the day, and that sleep deprivation obviously impacts functioning. I love that I could have taken that approach, right? I could have said, hey, we need to talk about the importance of sleep, because I preach about that all the time now. Like, I understand from, a brain perspective what sleep does. And in fact, I had a conversation with my oldest son yesterday. I interrupted him while he was sleeping yesterday morning. I needed to get into his room for something. And he said, I'm asleep. You cannot come in right now while I'm sleeping. And I was arguing with him through the door. And so he came, I finally gave up because he kept saying, no, I'm sleeping. He came up yesterday evening and said, hey, I need to talk to you. I need to remind you how important my sleep is to me. I have ADHD, I have Tourette's. It's important for my attention span. It's important for me to be able to control my tics. When you interrupt my sleep, then I can't function. And it was this aha moment. This is an adult child, right, who lives in my basement. But this aha moment for me that I messed that up, right? I messed that up. I mean, I fell on my sword. I offered these apologies. And so for them to have the self-awareness, for us to teach them that self-awareness of how important sleep is, I just like that we could use that perspective, right? So it doesn't feel like we're controlling them. It's like, hey, we want to maximize your chances for success during the day, and sleep is
Because I
one of
do
those.
feel like kids can work around our control. So I don't do that either. So I know my kids can work around any sort of control I'm going to try to place on them. So I'm more in the conversations. Let's have conversations about what you're going to see online, and let's protect your sleep. But to your point, Dr. Amy, I also I'm sure I've so messed up in so many ways. So this is what I get back to. There's so much on our shoulders. Like we don't have a ton of guidance here. We are just trying to wing this as parents. But the cool thing is look, your son has got this now. As a young adult, he's like, I got this. And that's kind of back to our earlier conversations. I feel like there's this messy middle, but they're coming out and they're knowing now how to practice self-care in this, tech obsessed world, in many of them, not all of them, but so they're getting it. So don't beat yourself up, and we all as parents can't, because we're just trying to figure this out. This has all been thrown at us. We're doing the best we can, with all this information. But that is one that I feel like that's a pretty clear argument. Sleep, and once they get it, once they get the importance of this, if they're all academically inclined or they're sports inclined, we got to find out what it is that they're passionate, and then we can figure out why sleep is important for that, and guaranteed there is a direct connection to what they're passionate about and how sleep is important to that, and we just got to keep making that connection for them.
Absolutely. And I know Teri's going to jump in here in a second because she does parent a little differently than I did. But I want to just point out something from your book. You have this weird fact. I love how you just throw weird facts in all the time. In Taiwan, parents can be fined $1,600 if their kids spend too much time on screens. Yes. $1,600. So they've made it easy for Taiwanese parents, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to pay $1,600 if I don't shut you off at 8 p.m.
It's like speeding tickets.
Oh, totally.
Or not wearing seatbelts. Like, we can tell our children, put your seatbelt on, because if an officer comes by and does not see that strap across you, we're getting a huge ticket, and I'm not letting that happen. And we're protecting them, we're caring for them, we're doing what feels secure and safe, but there's someone else that's kind of
you can blame it on the Taiwanese government or the police officer that's right. Like, well, if you do this, here's the consequence. Whereas we don't have that, right? Like, so we have to find these other ways to help motivate them to hear what we're saying, right?
So that's what I'm going to jump to. I want our listeners, I want me to hear some practical advice. So I was much more controlling hover parent for my older kids. I mean, I came about it very naturally because my firstborn had major medical problems and I had to watch over him all the time. Hydrocephalus and epilepsy. And so that created a very hover parenting perspective for me because I worried night and day. And so I was more controlling than with his sisters that were just younger than him as well. And that damaged the relationship. And it's okay, but it's hard. I hurt my relationship with them. And there is a bit of a wall between us, and they don't feel super connected to me. They feel that mommy was controlling and daddy was fun. And so they're kind of like, they have a hand up to me a little bit. And I regret that. And that has broken my heart. And so then with my other kids, I have 9 altogether. Listeners, I know I'm completely crazy. So with some of the younger ones, I've gradually drifted away from that. Obviously, my older son is great. He's doing fine. He has succeeded. I don't have to watch over him anymore. He's 28. But then my son that's 18, a little less controlling, but had some of that. And what he says now is, it didn't matter when daddy would turn off the internet, we would just turn it back on later. We would stay up anyway. So you just said it, Jessica, kids are going to get around parental controls. Mm-hmm. And he says now, as he sees me still trying to, now with his younger siblings, to step in and try somehow to help them get sleep, understand this isn't working. You know, my 14-year-old daughter, she's up super late at night, like watching a show or I don't know, social media. I'm not sure what all. She'll say she's put it away and it's done. And then 3 o'clock in the morning, she's watching something. And then she's super emotional the next day. And then she's angry if I say you're overtired. And then my 13-year-old son, well, Ian said this, you know what I mean? There's all this, there's this fight. There's this, I don't know how to help them. What do I do, Jessica? Help me.
Oh my God. And this is so true for everybody. So I'm so glad you said that, because all our kids are different too, right? So they're all navigating this in their own unique way too. So yeah, that's a tough one. And let me see what would be helpful. I feel like, summer might be the time to allow more, but as we get closer, we already start having these conversations, getting back to my sleep thing. Like, I want you to feel like you are able to be a teen and stay up late, because teens are going to want to stay up late. That's just their body clock, right? But as we get back to school and you have to be up at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, like let's start to think this through. What would help you get back to a schedule, once we hit school time and we're getting, we know that you just need to function well. I know school's important to you, and I know you have aspirations of going to college. So what would be helpful to you to transition to this awesome freedom of summer to getting back to, where you really are taking care of your health and getting a good night's sleep through summer? And so I would start there. But I guess what's so challenging is that's not happening in a lot of homes, and so just knowing that. So she's fully aware that what's happening in your home is not happening in your friend's home. They just,
right.
So I see this all the time with my kids, and they know that. And I feel like that's okay. They can know that what's happening in our house is different, but in our house, we feel like this is so important. And again, I've tied it back to things they want to do. And so, they want, she wants to go to school here, and, she wants, so I'm just trying to make her realize how important her functioning well is to all of these goals that she has. So I would maybe try that. But again, who knows, every kid is different. So I think it's also important for us to understand the vulnerabilities of our specific kids. And maybe we just really hone in on that. So for some kids, especially girls, maybe if they don't have a positive body image, we might have a lot more conversations about what they're seeing online and, just inappropriate, unrealistic, body standards for women and girls online. So knowing our own kids' vulnerabilities, and where they might really struggle, we can actually just focus there too. If that's, that might be enough too. Like, where are they most likely to really get into a dark place? And we just kind of talk about that. So yeah, that's a tough one. I wish I had like these perfect solution, but this is not easy stuff. No, it's no wonder that we're all trying to figure this out, because there's no easy answer here. And just go back to what Dr. Amy said, what they're doing in Asian countries, it's just like, boom, here, this is the rule. But in this country, that's just not how we go about things. But I have to say that I sat in for part of the research of this book. I sat in on some Senate hearings for how to protect kids' safety online. And there's a lot of stuff in motion. And we could already see individual states, one's banning, is requiring parental permissions, one, so there's a lot of things bubbling up right now at the federal level. There's not consensus as to what is the answer on the path forward, but there is definitely consensus that we need more guardrails in place to protect kids' privacy, to protect them from seeing, really explicit and violent things online that they shouldn't be seeing, to actually even think about designing these apps in ways that are meant for kids, because a lot of them actually were designed for adults and now they're being used by kids. So these conversations are happening, but in this country, it's going to take us a while to get to some solutions. Just an example of like when cars were invented in the late 1800s, it took until the 80s before seatbelts were required in one state, and we had to start with kids because everyone was like, no, you can't make me put on my seatbelt. But New York State, in I think it was the 80s, was the first one that to protect kids allowed seatbelts, and then it kind of flowed from there. And now seatbelts are, of course we have seatbelts in cars, we have safety sensors and backup cameras, of course we do, but it took us a long time to get there. I'm hoping for tech it's not that long. I'm hoping that we can maybe get there a little faster, because I do think we have there's things that can be done. We could right now put some meaningful age verification on a lot of these sites, instead of what's now, which is not at all effective or meaningful. So there's things we can do right now. We just need kind of some regulations at the top to get there.
So I want to talk a little bit.
Encouraging. That's just all encouraging,
right?
Everything you said.
Like, you hate the idea of Big Brother telling you how to parent, but at the same time, parents want a little bit of help in this area, right? Yeah. Because it is so wild, wild west at the moment. Yeah.
Yes. And every industry in this country is regulated right now, except really tech. Okay, so that just kind of explains why it is the wild, wild west right now, because we to not stifle innovation, we did not put any restrictions on tech. So tech companies are not at all liable for any content put on their platforms, and that has certainly not been great for kids. So kids are seeing TikTok challenges that are actually really harmful, and kids have died doing TikTok. So because there's no regulations or liability yet for tech companies, but it's coming. I mean, every other industry is regulated in this country, so it's coming. We're just trying to figure out how to do that to best protect kids, which is hard because so much content. I mean, the volume of content being thrown online is so incredible. And so it is really hard to try to manage that too. But I know it's possible. I know we can do so much better when it comes to kids. I know we can, and I'm hopeful we're going to get there.
So I want to, speaking of harmful, you talk about this YouTube influencer who kind of performed this experiment. And so I want you to talk about that in just a second. We have interviewed trauma therapist Clint Davis a couple of times, and he talks a lot about having to protect our kids from online predators. He quotes a statistic that something like 80% of kids are propositioned online by an adult and 50% of them respond. And so statistics like that are terrifying as parents, but you spend an entire chapter talking about these potential dangers. Tell us about this YouTube influencer and what he did and what he found.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's an age appropriate way to talk to kids about stranger danger? Because I still remember from being a kid that I was terrified every time I saw a white van, for my whole childhood, because I remember those stories were so scary. So I'm like, okay, this is important to talk about, how can I talk about this in a way that's slightly less scary? So I came across this story of this influencer who's, in his 30s, and he got attuned with how that this is a problem for kids. So he had some family friends, and he said, I bet you if I pose as a 15-year-old on social media, I can get your daughters to connect with me online and to meet me. And so he had the parental permit, and the parents like, no way, you can't do this. So he does it. He puts up his 15-year-old profile, and he starts direct messaging, because they all had open social media accounts. So they're public accounts, not private accounts. So he could say, hey, I'm so-and-so, you're so beautiful. I'd really like to get to know you. So all those questions that, we want to talk to our kids about, some of these probing questions. Do your parents check your account? So starts this conversation. Sure enough, in a very short period of time, he convinces all three to meet with him, and so the parents are just blown away. And so this gets back to the vulnerability, especially, I feel like, I know it's all genders, but I feel like especially for young girls who are in that place where, those compliments, they go a long way, and they are trying to connect, and, and they want to feel beautiful. And so just being aware of that. So that story's in the book. And I thought, by doing this as an adult who's pretending it's a little less scary than the white van story that I heard that was so scary. But I feel like it is important, again, if they have a connected device, to talk about this, because even me as a middle-aged woman, I am amazed how many people send me, I have public accounts on social media. I'm blown away with how many people, send me stuff, or, I'm like, really? I'm a middle-aged woman. So it happened. I see it happen to me. And I know it happens to my daughters too. They get approached. So that's another conversation that we just have to have. And the younger the kids are, in that book, it's talks very clearly about making sure your social accounts are private. That right there is going to keep, people from, they can't even see what you're posting online if your accounts are private, and they're under a name that is not your name. They're under more of a nickname, and you never share with anybody in a direct message, your address, or, where you go to school, or you just teaching them the basics of staying safe and keeping your information private online. So yeah, I wish we didn't have to talk about this, but I feel like with now this connectivity, it's more important than ever.
Yeah, that's such good advice. I'm like, okay, I need to just open that chapter up. I'm thinking I could do this on like a road trip or a drive, because the thought of sitting down, and right now I'm thinking about my 14-year-old daughter, my 13-year-old son, my 11-year-old daughter, the thought of sitting them down and saying, we're going to talk about this already. Boom, their brains are shut. They are out. They are like, I'm done with you. I don't want to hear that. And we're close.
Yeah.
Like, we're connected. I love them. They don't hate me, but nevertheless, if I tried to do that about media, when I start talking about media, screens, phones, they start shutting me out. Now, my 13-year-old son and my 11-year-old daughter, they don't have phones, but my 14-year-old does, because she was always at the dance studio. She doesn't even have cell service. It's only through internet, but she still has a phone. We needed it to be able to connect with her, because we could iMessage her for pickups and things like that. I could do it on a drive.
Yeah.
I can have them read the chapter aloud on a drive. We're facing forward. We don't have to look at each other.
Yeah.
Any other ideas like that? I want our listeners to have practical ideas to really know how to speak to our preteens and our young teens about these issues. Other ideas.
And I think real stories are helpful. So if you have seen this on, you have actually gotten some messages online, or you're aware of a story in your community, I think stories are really powerful, true stories of things that have happened to other people. But I think as much as I hate to say this, I think it's really important for kids to know that there are people with really bad intent out there that, that do grooming like activities to connect with them. And so, talk about the questions they might ask them, or what they might say to them. And, and just, yeah. So I think doing it, like you said, on a drive or a short walk, so they know that, maybe towards the end of the drive, as you're pulling into your neighborhood, you bring it up, or, just so they say, no, this is going to be uncomfortable, but we're almost home. But I think it's so important, and you can even tell them, what to look for. And so here's one thing I've noticed, that for me, as this middle-aged woman that gets these really odd requests, there tends to be patterns. So what's hard to pick up is the person who is 15 and is, it's a fake photo and a fake name and a fake account. So talk about that. But there's also, young men, mostly men. I hate to stereotype, it's mostly men. And there's often a consistency with what they're sharing online. They tend to have a photo of them in a position of trust. They're a doctor, or, they might have a military uniform on, or, so some position of trust. And then it's them with the puppy. And then it's them in a sports car. And, so I actually should save all these. I'm like, wow, look at all these consistent profiles that I over the last couple of years, I've gotten 25 of these, of not the same person, all different people, but, trying to show that, hey, I'm successful, I'm trustworthy, I have a puppy, so just helping them know that this is a thing, and so if you ever come across something like that, you can share that with them as well. And never fun conversations, but really, really important conversations to have with our kids, especially, again, when they are fully connected, when they have connection with the outside world, either through social media, especially through social media, if they have a public account, and texting.
So we need to take a break, let Teri read a word from our sponsor. And when we come back, I want to shift and talk a little bit about cyberbullying and digital drama, and kind of the difference there that you talk about in your book when we come back.
All right. Are you concerned about your child's reading or spelling performance? Are you worried your child's reading curriculum isn't thorough enough? Well, most learning struggles aren't the results of poor curriculum or instruction. They're typically caused by having cognitive skills that need to be strengthened. Skills like auditory processing, memory, and processing speed. LearningRx one-on-one brain training programs are designed to target and strengthen the skills that we rely on for reading, spelling, writing, and learning. LearningRx can help you identify which skills may be keeping your child from performing their best. In fact, we've worked with more than 100,000 children and adults who wanted to think and perform better. They'd like to help get your child on the path to a brighter and more confident future. Give LearningRx a call at 866-BRAIN-01 or visit learningrx.com. That's learningrx.com.
Thank you, Teri. And we're back talking to Jessica Speer about her new book, The Phone Book. I just want to clarify two things before we keep talking. Hey, I was telling a story earlier about needing to get into my adult son's room while he was sleeping yesterday. He did not do anything wrong that I needed to get in there. We were changing the alarm sensors on all the windows in the house. And so I just needed to get in there to change out those sensors. Anyway, yeah. I'm like, if somebody's listening, they're like, why did you need to get into your adult child's room? Right. But anyway, that's why. And then second of all, as you all know, I'm always drinking coffee because I do have a coffee love. And so today I'm drinking out of this cup that I stole from my son, Evan. And it says, can y'all see it? It says depresso. Okay. That feeling when you're about to run out of coffee. Depresso.
Well, so are you going to use the word nomophobia?
Right. I love that. Yes. So before we talk about cyberbullying, Jessica, talk about nomophobia real quick, because we love that.
So nomophobia is this new anxiety. It comes up, the fear of not having our phone, or the fear of not being connected. And, I think we've all felt that, like the little panic, oh, where's my phone? And so teens and preteens really experience this, not having that connected device. can really bring up this nomophobia. So yeah, so that term is new and it's in the book, just for fun, so kids know this is a thing, and they will clearly relate to that feeling of panic or anxiety when they don't have their phone.
Yeah. And there's
All
so
right.
many other terms, FOMO and cyberbullying, and talk about those.
Yeah. And so I wanted to just, again, this is just, I know we've been talking about the really hard topics, but trust me, it's not all, Debbie Downer book. There's a lot of really positive stories about what kids are doing online too. So the whole premise is, we can use our phones as a force for good, but there's a lot of information so that our kids are much more informed consumers, so they can make these choices. But yeah, full of fun facts, which are new, like this new term called fubbing, which is, instead of paying attention to the people you're with, you're looking at your phone. So we can all, acknowledge being fubbed too, when the person we're with is actually staring down at their phone. So, all these fun terms, which goes to show how these devices have just changed our world so much and our interactions with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, there's sad something. What is that term?
Oh, sad fishing. Okay, so sad fishing. So sad, and this is pretty common. So, one way the kids get support if they're feeling really down is they will go and share this on social media, like share their struggles very publicly, which in some cases works out really well. They will get the support that they're hoping to get, but sometimes it doesn't. It backfires, so they really they're putting themselves out in a vulnerable way publicly, and then they get hit with some really mean, maybe bullying comments, or they don't get the support they need. So yeah, through sharing that phenomena, I wanted kids to know that, if you really need support, try to go to someone who can give you that support. By throwing it out there into your online world, you just never know what you're going to get back, and it might not be exactly what you need to get you through this tough period.
Yeah. So fubbing, we got that one, what that one means. So we can speak the right lingo, okay? Yeah. And then streaks, you talked a little bit about streaks. That's like on Snapchat.
Mm-hmm. So
other places?
Yeah. So and Snapchat is a big one for kids to communicate, and they often have their location on, so they can see pretty much where everybody in their grade is, which was interesting. One of my daughters is on that, and on spring break, she pulled it up, and we could see where everybody is. I'm like, this is so weird. I mean, it's how they're living these days, so I don't advise having your location on, but when they get to a certain age, they're an older teen, they might choose to have their location on if you as parents allow that. But back to streaks. Okay, so Snapchat is a main communication channel for teens, and one of the ways that Snapchat keeps users so involved is these things called streaks. So you and your friend, might start a streak, and that's day one, and you have to send each other, a picture of yourself. And often these days, kids will just take a random picture of a wall, which is really interesting. That's kind of a little bit of a snuff too, depending. But they'll take, but every day there is a picture exchange between whoever you're in the streak with, and it just adds up. So it could get to like day 60, and now you guys are going on a camping trip, and your teen might be so nervous because they're not going to have service, and they're going to break this streak. So this is a tough one, because it becomes really meaningful, and they don't want to be the one who is breaking the streak. But this is where I talk a lot about persuasive design. So this is a brilliant strategy, to keep kids online. So the strategy is, if they have to check this and take a picture and share it every day, so we are therefore increasing their use of this particular platform. So them knowing that, however, it doesn't make it any easier. So sometimes it will take, I've seen this happen a lot too. One kid will lose their phone, and all that is broken. So all the streaks are broken, text groups are lost, and they actually feel, after they get over their nomophobia, they then feel this whole sense of relief. They're like, shoo, I don't have to worry about maintaining these anymore, because it does get back to that social stress, that digital stress. It's a lot to maintain that. Think about that, trying to do that every day. Now, Snapchat is going to send you notifications to remind you that you have this streak going, but it's a lot to keep up on. So talking to kids, again, not in a judgmental way, but just acknowledging the pressure of that and how that can be really hard. And sometimes you've got a streak with somebody that's not even that good of a friend, but it's become meaningful in its own way, and you don't want to be the one to end that. So conversations about all that tricky stuff.
And there's a way, just to be warned, because this has happened with me. I actually do Snapchat with just my kids and their significant others. So it's a way that we all stay connected. Now, they probably Snapchat with 100,000 other people. I don't know. But for us, it's a great little connection. And we've had that whole thing where the streak is broken. And, like my 18-year-old son, Ian, he's super, super social, and he's really into it. And he'll be like, Mom, you left me open. And so apparently left me open, it means that I looked at his snap and I didn't snap back. And then I'll just have a busy couple of days and I'll lose my streak. And maybe we had a 120-day streak, and he probably has like 450-day streaks. Here's what happens though, parents, be warned. Snapchat will ask you if you want to restore that streak. And with a click of yes, it's 99 cents. Easy peasy, right? Not if that kid has 100 contacts. So just let your kids know.
Wow.
Please, my son, if you are connected to my account, which if they're 13, 14, 15, they don't have their own credit card. And so right away, boom, all they're doing is saying, yes, 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 restore my streaks. And all of a sudden they just spent $100. Yikes.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought up the leaving open thing. Okay, so we have to understand, as now adults that didn't grow up with this technology, this is really complicated social dynamics. So that means a lot. If something is left open, that means a lot. But what you said, Teri, is so true. Sometimes life gets busy, and so one kid might be reacting to being left open where the other one didn't intend to actually, hurt this person, but sometimes it is very intentional, but that whole navigating the dynamics of that are tricky. So as a parent, I have to realize I so don't get this at a deep level, so I have to come at this with a lot of curiosity to try to understand the dynamics of this for my kids, and often I need to be cautious with the advice I'm sharing because it could be so off base because I don't understand the deeper level meaning of a lot of these communications. So we have to be aware of that as parents, that we are not fully getting the social dynamics of what's happening online. And so we have to be careful with what we advise because it could be totally inappropriate and turn our kids off. So if we can come from a place of curiosity and just trying to understand how this works, we're going to have a lot better luck connecting with our kids and giving them really horrible, unrealistic advice.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. Yeah.
Yes. There's the key. There's the takeaway.
Yeah. Because this isn't our area of expertise, right? Like we don't have the same kind of experience and even if we are Snapchatters, like Teri, is that what you say? Snapchatters? Even though Teri is a snapper, she does not have the experience of being a snapper as a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So even though, yes, we use this technology, we're not coming at it from a preteen or teenage brain.
Yes. And, in this book that is, really for someone who's just getting started, I don't unpack all those very complicated hidden rules, because they will come to those over time and those will change, Snapchat might not even be the thing by the time some of these readers are reading this book. So it's more of a baseline. Here's your foundational groundwork as you enter this, very complex connected world, but it is always changing. The dynamics they're complicated. These kids, amazing. It's really amazing that they are navigating this. It's not easy.
Okay, so I have a question not related. You said that you wrote the majority of this book during COVID. Now we have this explosion of AI, of artificial intelligence. Have you had an opportunity to chew on that and the implications of that yet?
Yeah, I don't know where that's going to go. I've been thinking about that. And AI is not new, like so a lot of programs that we've already been using use AI, like when our emails start to type what we might want to say for our first line, or, Grammarly that's fixed. So it's definitely been out there. But what I don't understand is what the impact is going to be for schools. So what I am hearing on the ground is that students are absolutely already using this to write whole entire papers. And we are not yet at a place where we can police that and know whether that's happening. So I to answer your question, I don't know, like, how does education respond, and what is the impact on education? What are the skills that kids need to know now, knowing that this is just going to get smarter and faster and better? So yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but that's a really big question of how this could impact all of us in so many ways, including education and work.
Yeah. Yeah.
The world is so different. Oh my
I
goodness.
know. And it's happening so fast. I mean, like, that was really fast. Like last year, kids in high school were writing their papers. And I'm like, wow, now there's a lot of students, and I'm not going to generalize all, but according to, the high school sources I have, there's a lot of kids using that as their first blush of writing. And then we have to come to terms like, okay, is that okay? Or is that not okay? Or what do we want to do with this?
Yeah. And why wouldn't they? Why I would. I mean,
Yeah.
if I'd have been 13 and had to write an essay on Paraguay, I'd be like, yeah, let this computer system write it. Even if I have to learn a little bit of the basics about Paraguay for my test, oh my gosh, if I don't have to write it, why wouldn't I? It's really, really, really hard to tell our kids you shouldn't do that, or to shame them for it, because it's like, well, it makes sense. How incredible. Technology is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are the skills we need to know for the future? And how do we make sure that this is spitting out good information?
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, I'm in some podcasting groups, and I actually saw a post of someone saying, hey, is it okay, because I can't afford to hire actors to be on my podcast? Is it okay if I use AI for that, to have a conversation with an AI bot?
Oh
Like,
my goodness.
it kind of blew my mind. So this person, instead of interviewing someone, is going to interview with AI, like an AI voice. Like, fascinating.
Wow.
And
That is it is mind blowing. I mean, that's why the writer's strike is happening right now. They don't want to be replaced by AI. And I also wonder, I'm like, gosh, I wonder if AI had written the phone book. Wonder what that would have been like. Wonder what that would have been like. So yeah, I don't know where this is headed. This is, stay tuned, because this is going to be really interesting how this ripples through society.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We're getting close to being out of time. And I just want to come back to what I feel like you said just a little bit earlier, that I want our listeners to hold on to, and that I think is really, really key about this entire conversation and this concept, this new world. Everything is changing. Be curious. So that's what I need to do. I'm thinking, okay, I'm on that drive, I'm on that road trip, I want to read that chapter, have one of the kids read sections out loud, whatever, so that we can talk about it, however that looks. But the biggest thing I need to do is say, Nakota, help me understand why. Why is it so important that he's my 13-year-old, that you be online with your friend? We talked about 10 o'clock needs to be off, but you're online with your friend from, 10:30 to midnight after I think you're off. Help me understand why. And if I'm curious, then maybe I'm going to hear things like, well, that's the only chance he had because his brother was this, and it's the only way I have to connect with my friend. And he has said some of that it's the only connection he has with that friend is that online gaming app.
Mm-hmm.
And how I need to understand that. How can I just say, no, shut it down? Because friendships are important. That social connection is important. Yeah. So that at least will give me grace. And even if I can put parameters on it, okay, how about 3 nights a week or whatever I need to do? But if I'm curious first, then I'm all about connection with my kid instead of control.
Yeah, and coming to some place of compromise. So once we have that deep understanding, what is a way that, we know that you really want to connect with your friends, and that's where your friends are hanging. And I know as a mom, it's one of my jobs to make sure that you are taking care of your well-being and sleeping. So how can we meet in the middle on that? Because and in many ways we come to this like with technology is often so bad, but in many ways they're doing exactly what we did. We listen to music and boom boxes, they're listening on Spotify. We used to play Atari video games, they're all connected online. We used to actually get together and have parties, they're all hanging out on Snapchat. So they're doing this. I think what is so different is because it's 24 hours. It is nonstop, and so we can help them try to take care of themselves in this place that it's never ending. But yeah, I love that. So come from a place of curiosity and connection, and see if you can find some middle ground there.
Yeah, and I think I want to add to that too. You all have heard me say many times that connection is the number one buffer against mental health crisis. And frequently I hear that parents choose taking phones away as their go-to consequence. And so I come at that totally differently. As a psychologist, I would say find another way, like find a different consequence. If that's the way you parent, that you want to impose a consequence, don't take connection away, because our kids need that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing that I just want to make clear to our guests, our listeners, is that this book is for kids, right? So this book is informational for parents, but hands-on, interactive for preteens. And so that's what makes you different, Jessica, as one of our guests, right? That you didn't write a book for parents, you wrote a book specifically for kids so that they can dig in, hear stories about other kids their age, find out really cool, weird facts, but also really, truly understand what happens when they interact in different ways with their technology. Am I right? Is that how I would say that?
Absolutely. And for me, the ideal reader is maybe just about to take a leap up from where they are. Whatever they got now, they're about to go from the iPad to the phone or something. So they're about to launch into maybe some more freedom. So I love kids to read it at that point. And of course I always encourage families to read it too, because it's going to give them a better understanding of what kids are about to experience, and can have some foster some of those communications. But yeah, my hope was to arm them with information and awareness as they enter this new digital world.
What are you working on next?
Whew, that's a good question. I've been so busy on these books, and I'm like, I need to write another book. so I'm open to ideas. I've thought about recircling back, and so my first book was really written for girls, and one of the biggest pieces of feedback I've had is that boys need this too. So I'm circling back on that, and I might go there. I might go to, again, a friendship focused book, maybe with a lot of maybe these online social dynamics, which are so complicated, for all genders, but I haven't started yet. So I'm open to ideas. I like tricky, hard things that teens are facing. So if you have any ideas, send them my way.
Well, sex is always a good topic.
I know. Actually, I'm like, consent. Maybe I should write about consent. That would be really interesting.
And gaming, I think, for preteen and young teen boys, online games, and it has now become very relational, very connected, because there's these online gaming apps where they've got the headphones on, they're talking to their friend, they have this one screen, they're looking at a friend, and then they're all sort of viewing the same video game, and they're like participating.
Yeah, they're on Discord on this screen and the actual game on this. Yeah.
Which is so cool. It's so cool. Like, you can't get together to play Monopoly because your friend is not across the street. They're like way down in another town, It's awesome.
I know.
But how do we navigate that in the time frame? And that would be a good topic.
That would be good.
I need that one.
Good idea. I'm taking notes.
And then I think step families or blended families is also a really challenging topic. Like we know that teens have a more difficult time going through divorce and remarriage than younger children do. And so that would be interesting. Like, how do we navigate, opening our hearts to new brothers and sisters, new parents, right? Like, that would be interesting too. Yeah, we'll just keep throwing those ideas at you, Jessica. You guys just churn them out. You can use AI to help you.
Okay, good. I've decided, as soon as my kids get back to school, I'm on it. New book. I'll keep you posted.
All right, sounds great. All right, we are out of time. This has been a fantastic third conversation with Jessica Speer. Thank you so much for coming back and sharing your wisdom and encouragement and cool facts. And we just love hearing from you. So listeners, if you would like more information about Jessica's work, her website is jessicaspeer.com. That's SPEER. You can also connect with her on Facebook at Jessica Speer Author, Twitter at Speer Author. She's got a bunch of handles. I'm going to just put those in the show notes for you. And of course, on the page for her episode. So we'll also put a link on how to purchase her book, the phone book, Stay Safe, Be Smart, and Make the World Better with the Powerful Device in Your Hand. Thank you so much for listening today. If you like us, please follow us on social media at the Brainy Moms. Do it right now before you forget. If you love us, we would love it if you would leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. If you would rather watch us, we are on YouTube as well. That is all the smart stuff we have for you today. Catch you next time.
Bye. See ya.